Well, good day, boys and girls. Did you miss me? I know you did. Hey, today you're in class, and today we're going to be going over volts, amps, and watts. And my goal today is to take you guys from peanut-sized brains to walnut-sized brains. That's right. You're all pea brains in my classroom right now. We have to get you to walnut size. And if that offended you, get out of my class right now. Listen, you're learning from a guy wearing a pocket t-shirt. So don't mess with me. Let's get after it. Now, you're saying, well, you're so mean. Oh, and you probably came across this video because let's say you're a van lifer out there and you're trying to run a microwave and it ain't working. And you're like, I can't figure this out. What's going on? And you came here. So I would tell you that the way you did it is correct. And that, if you just turned it off, turned it back on, your brain was smart and you had it all figured out. And it's just going to work by turning it off and turning it back on. Well, that's not the case, knuckleheads. I know you came here because the crap ain't working, or you came here but smartly to build something or design something before you actually put it all together. That's why this class is my first, and it's the most important class. It is volts, amps, and watts, and trying to understand how to build a system that's right for you, okay? So let's get after it. Let's put up a slide here. All right, here you go. This is key right here. I can't even. Is my hand big? Or holy cow, whatever. Okay, watts equals amps times volts. Put that in your brain, knuckleheads, okay? Watts equals amps times volts. So if you had 10 volts, or and you had 10 amps, figure it out, knuckleheads, it would be 100 watts. Vitally important. And a lot of you people out there are going to be taking like, well, my microwave only takes 10 amps, so I only need 10 amps. Well, that's in 112 volt scenarios. Now we're dealing with 12 volts. So if you factor that, 10, let's say 12 volts times 10 amps, you're only getting 120 watts, You're not getting 1,000 watts to run your microwave. That's why this is important to know. You got to know the basics of solar before we go any farther, okay? All right. Amps equals watts divided by volts. See, if you are, if you went to 5th grade, you know that anytime you take this and bring it over here, you're going to divide it by the, whatever's left, okay? So that's what you're doing here. So to figure out amps, you take watts divided by volts. To figure out volts, you take watts divided by amps. Okay. Freeze this screen right now and save a picture of this chart here. Because I don't know why, but some people have a hard time wrapping their brain around this. And yeah, I'm going to go over a lot of scenarios on why this is all important. You can't even begin to start to design your system until you factor these simple equations right here out. Because, are you going to go with a 12 volt system? Are you going to do this? Are you going to bring in hundreds of volts coming in from your solar panel systems? Or just, low voltage? How far is your cable run from your solar field into your system? What kind of controller do you get? How many volts does the controller have to be able to handle for your system? All this wraps around, I don't even know what I'm doing here. This equation, everything's backwards whenever I'm doing this stuff. But these three equations. Okay. Like I was saying earlier, you know, if you want 1500 watts to run, AC is going to take way less amps because AC is a higher voltage. Voltage times amps equals watts. So when we're going from our 12 volt systems through an inverter to our AC systems, we're changing the volts 10 times. So you're going to have 10 times the amps to handle the same amount of watts. Does that make any sense, knuckleheads? Also, this factors in what size cables are you going to get. You know, the more amps, the bigger your cables. So do you go with the 12 volt system, a 24 volt system, or a 48 volt systems? Well, heck, a lot of it has to do with how many watts you want to get out of your system. Now, if you're going and you're running your whole house, 48 volts is the way to go because you're lowering the amps and your cable sizes don't have to be as big. Let's say your solar field is 200 feet away from you and you got to get it all the way back to your house. Well, heck, you know, if you're coming in, let's say your controller only handles 30 volts, okay? Let's start with that. But you have to come all the way back. And your cables are big enough to handle the amperage, right? But as you're coming through, that whole cable is resistance. So you're going from 30 volts and you're dropping all the way down to, let's say, 12 volts by the time you're getting back to your system. And your system ain't running right, okay? That has a lot to do with it too, also. So you might want to put some more panels in series out there, come up way high in voltage so you don't have as many amps, which is kind of causing your resistance. And so the voltage drop isn't as bad that far. And heck, you're starting out with, let's say, 200 volts. By the time you're getting all the way back to your house, yeah, you're down to 190 volts or something like that, 180 volts. Well, heck, you still got a lot of volts. Now, you did drop volts. So if you drop volts and you still have the same amount of amps by the time you get back there, you're not going to have as many watts. See how that plays into factor too? Is, you know, what kind of cable sizes do you need to get out there without the bigger the cable, the less voltage drops are going to happen. There's one scenario. I gave you a scenario. Let's say you got a battery. You're a van lifer again. You're sitting there like, gosh, golly, my microwave isn't working. Well, there's a couple things. For one thing, your 700 watt microwave is really taking more like 1100 watts to run. It cooks at 700 watts, but it takes 1100 watts from the wall socket, okay? But let's say you got a bigger microwave and you got 1000 watts. And it actually takes 1500 watts to run that 1000 watt microwave. And so by the time your battery only has 100 amps. So take 100 amps times 12, that's 1200 watts. Your microwave takes 1500 watts. Your battery's gonna, if the BMS is good, it's gonna trip out and it's gonna shut down and say, I'm not gonna handle it. Are your cables big enough to handle that much amps? That, you know, you're gonna have to figure that out. Did you think that you went from 12 volts up to 110 volts, and is your system able to handle all of this? Well, heck, we already know that your inverter, if your inverter is only, say, a 1000 watt inverter to run a 1000 watt microwave, it ain't never going to happen. That microwave is really running on 1500 watts. That's beside the point. That's for another class. I'm going with watts, amps, and volts. Just trying to give you knuckleheads some scenarios why this is so important and so easy to figure out. Again, you know, do you go parallel with your panels? Do you go series with your panels? Do you go parallel series? Because this is another class too, serial and parallel. But series, you know, you're going to add up all the voltages. You're going to have a higher voltage coming back. Does your controller handle that much voltage coming in from your solar panels? let's say you got a 20 amp controller and you're coming in at 12 volts. Well, take 12 times 20, and all you're going to get out of that thing max is 220 watts. So let's say you have a 600 watt panel out there and you're coming back, you know, it's only a 20 amp at, you know, whatever voltage your battery is at. That's all you're going to get. That's very important to know. So maybe your controller, you need to go find a different controller that handles more amps or allows more voltage, you know, also in from the panel. Say you got a 36 volt panel. Well, your controller has to be able to take 36 volts in. So you want to get, you know, one that has probably 50 volts from the solar panels. So if let's say you go 50 volts and you get a 40 amp controller and it's going to the 12.8 battery, guess what? You're still only going to get 12 times you know, the max amperage of, let's say, 40. So you got 12 times 40. Oh my gosh, I need to call a third grader right now. So you can figure this. Let's say 12 times 40 is, let's say 10 times 40, okay? So I don't rack my bread. 10 times 40, that's 400 watts. So a little bit more than 400 watts with 12 volts is all that 40 amps. Now, if you upped your battery system to 24 volts, 24 times 40, yeah, you're doubling how many watts you can use out at your solar panel coming in to feed the battery and have more amps going into your battery there. Yeah. There you go. See, it's vitally important. So again, if you go up to 48, well, you're 40, you know, times 40. Oh my gosh, I should think this through before I do a show. Is way more, you know, watts that you can handle out, you know, coming from your solar panels. See how that works, people? See why this is so important. So as you're building your system, it's going to tell you, you know, if you look at charts on, you know, how many amps can the copper wire handle and all that stuff like that, you have to know this. You have to know what your system is to get to where you have to go. And let's just look at these examples here real quick before I end this classroom. Knuckleheads. 10 amps times 120 volts equals 1200 watts. Well, looky here, we got the same watts. What could change over here? 5 amps, 240 volts equals 20. Heck, you're only doing 5 amps. You can cut the size of your wire down, save some money on wire, you know? And so there's advantages sometimes for going, you know, higher or lower voltages. Now, if you're just building a small system, you van lifers out there, it all depends what you want to do. If you want to run a couple lights in your place and everything, 12 volts is going to be fine. Now, if you're going to start wanting to cook with a microwave, you're either going to have to double your battery size, because let's say your battery only does 100 amps at 12 volts. That's 1200 watts. Your microwave's taking 1500 watts. It ain't going to work. So you're going to have to throw either another battery in parallel. So now you have 200 amps times 12. That's going to get you, you know, 2400 watts. You're going to be able to run your microwave then, okay? That's, again, this is just simple math. Okay, that's just another example. Okay, there you go. Now you have amps equals watts, volts divided by volts. Watts divided by, can't we just put this in order and put the equal over on this side? But whatever. Watts divided by volts equals amps. Okay, let's see an example of that. So you got 4,160 watts. I don't even know why they didn't keep everything the same here. I don't know. But whatever. That's going to give you 20 amps. All right. And here you're saying at 360 3,600 watts at 240 volts is 15 amps. This is stupid. They should have kept everything kind of the same. I would never do that to you. This is confusing, but you get the gist, okay? Let's go down here. Watts divided by amps equals volts. So watts, 2,400 watts divided by 20 amps, you're running 120 volts. Well, look at this. If you wanted 2,400 watts, but you wanted less amps, well then increase the voltage, and you're running 10 amps, and you're using smaller cable. Does any of this make sense? Oh my gosh, I don't know. Here again, screenshot this. Let me get it out of here. Well, there you go, knuckleheads. And again, we're just trying to take you from pea size to walnut size brains today. And if you keep on watching my series, heck, you might get up to Mr. Mark size brain. And we can all learn together. Let's not put each other down. But you got to have some backbone to come into my classroom to learn, okay? I got the pocket t-shirt. I ain't messing around. You're learning from a guy with a pocket t-shirt. I ain't going to put up with no crap from you knuckleheads. I want you all to be behaving out there in my classroom. If you don't like me bringing the heat, get out of my classroom. Go learn off. There's a million other videos on this subject here, and they're going to maybe tell you a nicer. Maybe they'll tell you, oh, your system doesn't work. Well, you're so smart anyways, and gosh golly, just turn it on, turn it off, and I bet you it works next time. And they make you feel good. They're not going to teach you right, though. You're going to be taught wrong. It's never going to work, but your feelings won't be hurt. Alrighty, knuckleheads. The bell just rang. Get out of class, and we'll see you on the next Solar 101 class.